Picture this scenario. A helicopter gunship, slow, loud, and anything but stealthy, glides through the skies over one of the most heavily defended nations on Earth. It hovers, it locks on, and then it fires. Not from a stealth bomber, not from a fifth-generation fighter jet, but from an Apache helicopter flying with impunity over Iran. That is not a simulation, that is not a war game, that is what is happening right now in real time over Iranian airspace. And if you understand what that truly means, you understand that the story of this war has entered a completely new chapter, one that Iran never thought possible. Let us start with why this matters so much. When militaries talk about establishing air superiority or air supremacy over an enemy, they are talking about a sliding scale of control. Air superiority means you can operate aircraft while still dealing with some threat from the enemy. Air supremacy means the enemy has essentially no ability to challenge you in the skies at all. The aircraft you send in first in any conflict against a modern military power are always your stealthiest, fastest, most survivable platforms. Your F-35s, your B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, your F-22 Raptors. These are the machines that go in when the enemy still has teeth. The machines that come later, the ones that arrive after the air defense network has been gutted, are the A-10 Warthogs and the Apache helicopters. They are slow, they are loud, they fly low. They are not designed to survive in a contested air environment. They are designed to dominate when there is no air environment left to contest. And right now they are flying over Iran. On March 26th, a senior defense official made a statement that sent shockwaves through the military analysis community. Apache helicopter gunships are flying strike missions inside Iranian airspace and throughout the Strait of Hormuz at will, the official said during a briefing. He also confirmed that A-10 Thunderbolt II aircraft, the iconic Warthog, were operating freely in Iranian airspace. And then he delivered the line that says it all. You only send these slow, low-flying close air support platforms when the enemy has no meaningful air defenses left. Let that sink in for a moment. Iran spent decades and billions of dollars building a layered air defense network. Russian S-300 missile systems, domestically produced batteries, radar networks, early warning infrastructure. The entire system was designed to force a reliance exclusively on the most advanced and expensive stealth platforms. The logic was simple. Make the cost of war so high that America would think twice before committing to a full air campaign. Those plans are now rubble. To understand how we got here, we have to go back further than the launch of the current operation on February 28, 2026. The degradation of Iran's air defenses did not begin with the opening strikes of this campaign. It began more than 8 months earlier. In June 2025, the United States and its allies launched a targeted air campaign that struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear program, devastating enrichment facilities at Fordow and Natanz, and destroying the metallurgy complex at Isfahan. But that operation did not just damage Iran's nuclear ambitions, it punched enormous holes in the country's air defense network, holes that Iran never fully repaired. As far back as December 2025, reports were already indicating that Iran faced critical gaps in its air defenses. A former Iranian president was devastating in his public assessment. He said, "The skies over Iran have become completely safe for the enemy. We no longer have real deterrence. Our neighboring countries, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, all have airspace controlled by the United States and its allies." That was an extraordinary admission. And it was true. By the time the current operation began, it was reported that Iran had only around 100 air defense launchers left across the entire country. 100 for a nation the size of Iran. And there was no guarantee that all of those launchers were even compatible with the full range of missiles Iran would have needed to mount a serious defense. Iran was already in a losing position before the first bomb fell in the current campaign. Then came the opening hours of the operation. Within the first 24 hours, military leaders stated that 80% of Iran's air defense systems had been destroyed or disabled. 80% in a single day. That is a figure that would have been considered impossible just a year ago. But it was not impossible. It was the result of years of preparation, intelligence gathering, and the systematic exploitation of every vulnerability that Iran had failed to patch after the previous operation. But even that number does not tell the full story, because 80% destruction of a network that was already severely compromised means that what was left behind was not a coherent layered defense. It was scattered isolated nodes, soldiers with shoulder-mounted launchers, a handful of radar stations operating in isolation, and older systems that had no effective integration with each other. The kind of defenses that are dangerous to individual aircraft in specific corridors, but completely incapable of preventing a sustained multi-platform air campaign. That is the world the A-10 and the Apache now operate in. Now let us focus on the A-10 Warthog and why its presence in this war is such a defining moment. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was built in the 1970s. Its official nickname is the Thunderbolt II. Its unofficial nickname, the Warthog, is far more appropriate. It is ugly, brutish, and purpose-built to absorb punishment and keep flying. Its titanium bathtub cockpit is designed to protect the pilot from ground fire. Its multiple redundant flight systems mean it can lose one of its two engines and still make it home. And its Ju-8 Avenger 30mm cannon, a 7-barreled rotary gun mounted in the nose, is capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute of depleted uranium rounds that can punch through tank armor. In a conventional air defense environment, the A-10 is vulnerable. Its service ceiling is just 20,000 feet. To put that in perspective, the Russian S-300 air defense system, which Iran was known to possess, can engage targets at altitudes of up to 19 miles. That is roughly 100,000 feet, 5 times the altitude the A-10 can reach. Under normal circumstances, sending an A-10 into a country with functioning S-300 batteries would be a death sentence. But Iran does not have functioning S-300 batteries anymore. Not in any meaningful integrated sense. According to reports from mid-March, a senior military official confirmed that A-10s are now flying combat missions over the Strait of Hormuz. The A-10 Warthog is now in the fight across the southern flank and is hunting and killing fast-attack watercraft in the strait. The same official also confirmed that AH-64 Apache helicopters had joined the fight, operating on the southern flank and working against Iranian drone threats. Let us talk about what those missions look like in practice. Iran's strategy in the Strait of Hormuz has centered on its fleet of fast-attack watercraft. These are small, highly maneuverable boats operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. They can be launched rapidly, they can swarm larger vessels, and they have been used to harass and threaten commercial shipping throughout this conflict. Oil prices surged past $100 per barrel after Iran declared the strait closed, choking a waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's traded oil normally passes. The A-10 is extraordinarily well suited to counter this threat. Its Ju-8 cannon, firing at nearly 4,000 rounds per minute, can reduce a fast attack boat to splinters in seconds. And it is not just the cannon. A-10s operating in the strait have been carrying general-purpose bombs, air-to-surface missiles, and laser-guided munitions. The air-to-surface missile alone has a range of over 17 miles, meaning the A-10 can destroy a vessel long before that vessel can threaten it. Air-to-air missiles give the Warthog a self-defense capability against Iranian drones and older aircraft, and another rocket system gives it an additional anti-drone tool. Footage has already emerged of an A-10 using its cannon to shred an Iranian proxy militia base in Iraq. And naval assets in the strait are being systematically destroyed. The scale is extraordinary. According to recent statements, the United States had struck at least 10,000 targets in Iran since the operation began. Not 10,000 munitions fired, 10,000 individual targets struck. The impact on Iran's military has been, by any measure, devastating. It has been claimed that 92% of Iran's large naval vessels have been taken out of the conflict. Missile launches from Iran are down 90%, the result of a systematic campaign against launch sites, production facilities, and supply chains. The former supreme leader was killed in the opening hours of the operation. Command and control centers across the country have been struck repeatedly. According to satellite imagery published in late March, at least 29 of Iran's ballistic missile launch sites have been destroyed since the operation began. But the really strategic strikes have been against Iran's missile production infrastructure. The sites that were critical nodes in Iran's ballistic missile supply chain, producing the fuel that powers those missiles, have sustained damage exceeding even what they absorbed during the war in June 2025. The logic here is not just immediate, it is future-oriented. As one commander stated, we will systematically dismantle Iran's missile production capability for the future, and that is absolutely in progress. You can destroy missiles, but if you also destroy the factories that make the fuel, you do not just set back the program for months, you set it back for years. The A-10 has been central to this campaign from virtually the beginning. In the early days of the operation, the stealth platforms, the F-35, the B-2 Spirit, the F-22, grabbed all the headlines. And for good reason, they were the ones punching through what remained of Iran's air defenses, delivering precision strikes against hardened targets deep inside the country. But the campaign did not rely solely on stealth. It combined those strikes with one of the most sophisticated electronic warfare campaigns ever executed. Electronic attack aircraft, equipped with advanced jamming systems, systematically disrupted Iran's radar and sensor networks. Space-based systems added another layer of interference. The result was not just the physical destruction of air defense batteries, it was the temporary blinding of the entire network, the creation of corridors where the threat was suppressed long enough for non-stealth platforms to operate. And that is how A-10s were able to enter Iranian airspace even during the early phases of the campaign, striking air defense units that had been compromised by cyber and electronic warfare before those units could recover and re-engage. There is a brutal irony in that picture. The platforms that Iran's air defenses were supposedly built to shoot down were the very platforms helping to finish those defenses off. Now, 2 former commanders of Central Command have gone on record with the same assessment. One former commander said, "We are not concerned really at this point in time about the air and ballistic defense of Iran as long as you stay above heavy machine gun range, and that means you can just really pour it on." I would argue that we actually have air supremacy now, not just air superiority. He added that he believed senior military officials were being cautious about making that claim publicly, but that the operational reality supports it. Another former commander was equally direct, saying, "I think we are accomplishing the objectives that we set out. We have been able to take out Iranian air defenses to the degree that I would argue we have effectively air supremacy over most of Iran. And what that has given us the opportunity to do is go hunt for ballistic missiles." Air supremacy, not superiority. Supremacy. 2 former Central Command commanders, both using the strongest possible language, both saying what the current military leadership will not say publicly, both pointing to the same operational reality. But let us be precise. 80% is not 100%, and the events of just the past few days remind us of that important distinction. On April 3, 2026, just a few days ago, the United States suffered its first aircraft losses to enemy fire in over 20 years. An F-15E Strike Eagle was shot down over Iran. One of its 2 crew members was recovered. A search for the second crew member remains ongoing. And around the same time, an A-10 Thunderbolt II went down near the Strait of Hormuz. According to officials who spoke to news outlets, the A-10 pilot was successfully rescued. Iranian state media claimed its forces had struck the A-10, though other sources, citing well-placed sources, reported that the cause of the crash was not an Iranian anti-aircraft system, but rather enemy fire encountered during a rescue operation for the F-15E crew. The cause remains disputed. The Pentagon did not immediately clarify, but the fact remains, for the first time since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, American aircraft are being brought down. This does not fundamentally change the strategic picture. Iran still lacks a coherent integrated air defense network. The United States still maintains overwhelming air superiority, and in most corridors, what 2 former Central Command commanders are calling air supremacy. But it is a reminder that scattered, isolated air defense capabilities, machine guns, shoulder-mounted launchers, residual missile batteries are not zero. They are a persistent, if degraded, threat, and they will continue to inflict costs on the campaign. According to the latest figures, the operation has now resulted in 13 American service members killed in action and 365 wounded. The human cost is real and it is rising. Meanwhile, the broader strategic situation is coming to a head. An ultimatum was extended for Iran to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz until April 6th. And then on Saturday, April 4th, a statement was posted online that Iran had been given 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. A senior Iranian military official rejected the ultimatum, calling it a helpless, nervous, unbalanced, and stupid action. The strait remains largely closed. Oil prices remain above $100 per barrel. A small trickle of merchant vessels is making its way through, but normal commercial shipping has ground to a halt. The economic pressure on the entire global trading system is immense. 5 European Union nations are now pushing for a windfall tax on energy companies profiting from the crisis. Another statement read, "With a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait, take the oil, and make a fortune." This is not a conflict that is winding down. This is a conflict that is escalating, and there is something else developing that could change everything. According to recent reports, as of April 3rd, the United States has been briefed on a complex ground operation plan to secure or remove Iran's remaining stockpile of highly enriched uranium, approximately 970 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% stored in tunnels more than 300 feet deep near Isfahan. The The plan would require flying in excavation equipment and constructing a runway for cargo aircraft to remove the material. It would take weeks, if not months, and it would introduce extraordinary operational risk for American service members on the ground in Iran. The plan has been requested and briefed. Whether the order is given to execute it is the question now dominating every strategic conversation about the future of this operation. To prepare for potential ground operations, a Marine Expeditionary Unit has already arrived in the Central Command area of responsibility. Another Marine Expeditionary Unit is en route. A second aircraft carrier departed the United States East Coast and is heading to the Middle East. Two new electronic warfare aircraft, which arrived in the United Kingdom just days ago, are now en route to the theater, specifically designed to deny, degrade, and disrupt Iranian communications, radar, and navigation systems. All the pieces of a ground campaign are assembling in the region. The battle for the Strait of Hormuz has been described as having been essentially kicked off by the A-10 and Apache deployments. Military leaders have confirmed that both platforms are operating on the strait's southern flanks, striking fast attack boats and intercepting Iranian one-way attack drones. America's Gulf state allies are also deploying their own Apache fleets in support. Several Gulf nations collectively operate dozens of AH-64 helicopters, all of which represent additional firepower in the campaign to clear the waterway. But clearing the strait will not be a matter of days. It will take weeks. There are anti-ship missile batteries to destroy, fast attack boat fleets to eliminate, naval mines to clear, and dozens of smaller military installations along Iran's southern coast to neutralize. As recently as Friday, Iranian media reported that strikes had set ablaze 16 commercial barges in the port of Bandar Lenge. Iranian forces are still resisting, still launching drones, still firing missiles, even if at a fraction of their original capacity. And yet, here is where we have to zoom out and look at what has actually been accomplished. In under 6 weeks, the United States and its allies have destroyed or disabled 80% of Iran's air defenses within the first 24 hours. They have killed Iran's former supreme leader. They have struck 10,000 individual targets. They have eliminated 92% of Iran's large naval vessels. They have driven Iranian missile launches down 90%. They have destroyed 29 ballistic missile launch sites and 4 of the most critical missile fuel production facilities in the country. They have sent A-10 Warthogs, aircraft from the 1970s, slow and unstealthy, to fly freely through Iranian airspace. And now there may be troops going in. This is the story of the century. It is unfolding in real time, faster than any single news cycle can fully capture. There is one more dimension to this story that cannot be left unaddressed. The A-10 Warthog, which is proving so decisive in this conflict, is a platform that the Air Force has been trying to retire for years. Air Force budget documents for 2026 call for the entire remaining Warthog fleet to be phased out of service by 2027. The argument has always been that the A-10 is too vulnerable for modern warfare, too slow, too limited in its role. This operation is dismantling that argument in real time. A retired Air Force colonel who famously landed a badly damaged A-10 without hydraulic power during the 2003 invasion of Iraq and has been an advocate for the platform ever since, predicted exactly this scenario. In an interview, she said, "If there are ground forces on the ground and we move beyond the initial stages of the conflict, there is going to be a role for a ground support platform in some way." She said this before the current war, and she was right. The Warthog found its war, and its war found it. Whether the A-10 survives its own retirement timeline is now a genuine question. Its performance in this operation, hunting boats in the Strait of Hormuz, striking missile production sites, operating in the electronic warfare corridors created by electronic attack aircraft and space-based assets, has made the case for its continued relevance more powerfully than any testimony or budget fight ever could. Here's where we stand as of today, April 5th, 2026. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Iran has a 48-hour ultimatum to act or face consequences. An F-15E crew member is still missing in Iran. The A-10 that went down near the strait on April 3rd has had its pilot recovered. Ground invasion planning is actively underway, and the United States continues to fly A-10 Warthogs and Apache helicopters over one of the most heavily sanctioned and militarily contested airspaces on the planet, with, as 2 former Central Command commanders have said, something approaching air supremacy. What comes next depends on a decision that may already have been made. If Iran opens the strait, the A-10s and Apaches will have done their job. The campaign will move into a new phase, one focused on consolidating the destruction of Iran's military infrastructure and managing whatever political transition follows. If Iran refuses, if the regime decides that the cost of capitulation is higher than the cost of continued bombardment, then American boots on the ground in Iran becomes not a question of if, but when. And that is a scenario with implications that extend far beyond the Persian Gulf, touching oil markets, international relations, global supply chains, and the strategic calculations of major powers watching this conflict from the sidelines. This is not just a story about aircraft and air defenses. This is a story about the limits of deterrence, the speed of modern air campaigns, the consequences of years of military degradation, and the extraordinary capabilities that America brings to bear when it decides to move. The skies over Iran belong to the United States. 2 former Central Command commanders said so, and the presence of A-10 Warthogs and Apache helicopters flying over Iranian territory unchallenged is the proof.